The Crow, released August 23rd, 2024. Directed by Rupert Sanders. Written by James O'Barr, Zach Baylin, and William Joseph Schneider. Starring Bill Skarsgård, F.K. Twigs, and Danny Houston. Rotten Tomatoes score, 20%. Metacritic, 29. IMDb, 4.7. Welcome back to Real Reviews. Like always, I am your host, Lee. Today we are talking about The Crow, the remake of the 1994 movie of the same name. You probably noticed the rather bad scores, so I want to get a few things out of the way. No questions this time. I yet again don't feel like any answers would contribute meaningfully to the discussion. Most importantly, I don't think this movie is inherently bad. It has flaws, obviously. It would be a middle-of-the-road movie if it didn't have the Crow name attached to it. It would be a middle-of-the-road movie if it was just another Crow movie and not a remake. But hey, let's talk about it. So if you are familiar with The Crow, you know the story. Eric and Shelley get murdered by a gang. Eric comes back a year later to get revenge. This movie is vaguely the same. Eric and Shelley are murdered. Eric comes back within hours to get revenge and to save Shelley's soul. This leads me to potentially the worst change. The bad guy isn't a gang leader. Now he's a wealthy guy with weird, vaguely explained powers who sold his soul to the devil for eternal life, but in trade, he has to corrupt innocent souls that otherwise wouldn't go to hell. Honestly, the only part one I'm not a fan of is that they introduced demonic powers for some odd reason. The story is okay, but I feel like they traded one of my favorite parts of the original to add in a how they fell in love story. One of the best parts of the original is the community of the city and how Eric and Shelley impacted those around them. In this one, very literally half the movie is the story of how Eric and Shelley meet and how they fall in love. It isn't even a bad story, but it feels odd because, again, it is part of a remake, not an original film. They didn't need to make a shot-for-shot remake by any means, and I think that would have felt odd. But they cut things that helped the original one get its cult status. Another weird element that I didn't see the need for is the fact that Eric is fighting to save Shelley's soul from hell and bring her back. If they have kept the slightly more simple revenge movie outline, it probably would have felt a bit better and less confusing. There are several shots in this movie that are just stunning to look at. Great lighting, great framing, the placement of people and objects works. Then we get to the computer-generated stuff. It looks rough. So rough that I honestly wish they had just not bothered and cut away. The last 30 or so minutes is a murder spree, and this is when things fall apart in the CG world. One of the most interesting things about the original was the city. It was always dark, it was always raining, like it was cursed to not be happy. This city is its own character that we see healed in the end. In this one, it is just a city, there is no life, no depth to it. Bill Skarsgård and F.K. Twigs did great. They seem to have decent chemistry. Bill does a great job emoting both vocally and physically, and he really commits to the more physical aspects of his acting. Danny Hudson doesn't inherently do a bad job. I think his character is just kind of bland and boring. Even by the end, there really just isn't anything there worth note. The goon characters also aren't particularly inspiring, and this is where I wish we had characters like Sarah from the original. Having characters that tie in with the city and with Eric would have been welcome. The pacing in this movie is a bit all over the place. The opening is so slow, and many times I was wondering when we would get into the revenge plot that is the core of the series as a whole. The last 30 to 45 minutes is a sprint because this is when all of the revenge plot has to happen. In that last bit, we get the murder, the rules for how the Crow power works, and the murder spree, and it could have used a bit of extra time to breath, especially when there was plenty in the first act that could have just been cut. Overall, I gave this movie a 4 out of 8 in my Matrix or a 5 out of 10 stars. I like this movie, I didn't love it, so I think a solid okay rating is perfect for it. Like always, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. I tend to have at least 2 videos out per week, ones like this or AI reviews depending on releases. Until next time,